for those of you who are just kind of joining in, I'm Elliot with TechCo. Really excited to have Ryan here from Product Hunt. He is the founder, and we'll hopefully dig into just a little bit of your background and then pick your brain a bit. But for those who are really just kind of unfamiliar with Product Hunt, which to me is still super surprising, but I kind of live in this digital world. It's really a collaborative platform where people such as myself curate some of the best products on the web. Using just a simple upvote, people will be able to get more visibility on their products. So basically, each day you'll be able to find some of the best stuff that's out there, and typically now you're seeing even some of the best stuff that are just launching, coming to Product Hunt before most places. Some of the people that in the marketing world that I just chat with, they're literally creating campaigns just to basically launch around Product Hunt. Before it was, let's create a Kickstarter campaign. Now it's let's create a Product Hunt campaign. So clearly you are building a massive community, but I don't need to tell you that. So maybe you can just kind of dig into your background a little bit and tell me, where Product Hunt came from.
Yeah, I can't help myself, but I have to make one mention of Sarah from Greylock. She made a funny comment on Twitter, and the comment was something along the lines of, what's your GIF strategy? And we're seeing more and more people use GIF walkthroughs to describe their product, and in the thumbnails and in the header, you can add a GIF on product. And some products in that 2 or 3 second GIF can describe exactly what it does much better than an image. So I think that's kind of a funny trend that we're seeing more of, is like these GIF walkthroughs being used to market and communicate what things do.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But to try and answer your question, so where do I start? Do you want the short version of how it started, or where should I begin?
So I did a little bit of LinkedIn stalking. So obviously I know you've got a bit of background as a product manager. Mm-hmm. So I can only imagine that it has some relation to your experience, kind of out in the field, and it evolved into wanting to give back to the community, maybe.
Yeah. So I my introduction to startups was actually into video gaming to begin with. So I started as an intern at a video game company in my senior year in college, and that turned into a marketing role, full-time marketing role, where I moved from Eugene, Oregon to Portland, Oregon. And I was there for about a year and learned a lot about startups. Being my first one, I also learned a lot of things that you don't do, and a lot of lessons there. So the long story short, with that company, it didn't work out. Unfortunately, it ended up shutting down eventually, like many startups do. And I moved to San Francisco to join a startup called Playhaven. And I joined there as the first product manager with about 10 people. And then we grew, about 3 years, we grew to 100 people or so. And so I saw like everything from, a very, very small team where everyone knows exactly what you're doing to 100 people, which with like a sales division and everything, and just a lot bigger operation. So learned a ton about company growth through that. And then of course, like product as well.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So, ideally, there's a few themes that I kind of want to dig into here. With South by Southwest kind of coming up, or I assume you're probably heading there shortly. I can only imagine the horrible amounts of invites that you're also getting. I only get a few, but my God, they are ruthless over there. So,
Actually, yesterday, Corley, Eric, and myself in this room, we were sitting down. I was sitting in the beanbag, which you can't see over here, and I was already overwhelmed by planning. I'm not really one that likes to do logistical stuff like planning ahead, in at least for this type of thing. And so I'm already kind of a little bit overwhelmed. My calendar, like many people, is just like stacked with a bunch of things, which I may or may not go to, but it's there.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that tends to come out of South by Southwest is there's always like at least one major product that tends to go a little bit viral, or just hits the spread. Last year, Meerkat definitely was like the item, and then Periscope a little bit later on top of that. Tons of different products have launched. Are you seeing any kind of common themes, or are you seeing any kind of rear their head that you think might, take that top spot?
Yeah. So this morning we published a list of, I think, about 16 or 18 apps that have the potential, we think, to get some traction and get some attention. These are all newer apps. Most of them are social, so communication tools or ways of expressing yourself in a social way. And I honestly am not sure we're going to see any major breakouts. I think Meerkat at the time was very obvious in that it launched 2 or 3 weeks before South
Hmm.
by. It already had a lot of traction, and the context of live streaming at South by makes so much
Right.
sense. So that one seemed obvious. I think this year it's not obvious that there will be any particular breakout, and that's fine. There doesn't have to be. However, there are some apps that are interesting. I've been playing with Anchor a bit lately.
Hmm.
Have you used it all?
I actually haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of interest, it seems like, in voice-based apps or
Hmm.
voice-based interfaces and communication, and Anchor is one of them, along with many others. The way that Anchor works is like bite-sized podcasts or bite-sized audio recordings. So
Hmm.
you can record up to 2 minutes of anything, really. Could be, here's what I'm doing, like almost like an audio blog, or it could be a
Right.
question you're asking to other people, and then they can chime in, and it becomes this thread of conversations. And in a world where we're seeing a lot more, well, there's just more and more people using like photos and videos, and that's
Hmm.
like an increasing trend. It's it's fascinating to see this platform using just audio only, which does reduce some friction. And like I'm not, like I don't have to worry about my hair because it's all audio. There is some advantages to using audio only to create content and share ideas.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, it's kind of like a collaborative podcast approach too, then.
Yeah,
Um,
they're doing something really interesting too, and taking some of these conversations that are really interesting and fascinating. Like the first one I heard of was with Hunter Walk he was doing a Q&A
mm,
about product management specifically,
mm.
and he would do an intro, talk about his background, and then other random people on the internet would just come in, do a voice call, and say, "Hey, like here's my question. Like, how do you prioritize, for example?" And then he would reply. And
Oh,
what
that's
they did is
awesome.
they took that, you can go in the app and you can listen to it, but they also
Mhm.
took it and exported it into a podcast and distributed it on SoundCloud and iTunes and so on.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and I can't remember what the other app was, but this might have been like a month ago. But there was basically an app that you can just throw on your phone now that you can just live stream a podcast.
Maybe
Man, I wish
Zcast.
that sounds like it might be it. Like when I was testing it out, it just like it streamed almost in real time versus like
Hmm.
these, there's a little bit of lag and stuff. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of podcasting stuff coming out, at least over the last year that have improved on the basic stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Hmm. And Blab, which we're using right now,
Yeah.
of course, is has some elements of that as well. I've seen a lot of people take these Blab conversations or recordings and then distribute them as like formal podcasts on iTunes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have to say this is probably one of my more favorite platforms that's actually out there, at least for video. We were using Hangouts and Skype and a ton of different things. We finally just settled
Yeah.
on this just because not only are we not having like latency issues, like Hangouts is like plagued with it, but I mean, it
Yeah.
just works so well. And, it's like the chat features, everything about it just makes it.
The call in is one of my favorite features. If the setting of the conversation makes sense to have multiple people call in,
Mhm.
that's what
Yeah,
I find most interesting.
yeah, it's very cool. So let's see here. Just out of curiosity, what are your thoughts on the app Peach? So it blew up for a little bit there.
Yeah, Peach was they had brilliant branding.
Mhm.
If it didn't have a peach emoji as its like icon and the name Peach, I don't think it would have gotten as much attention initially. That said, I'm generally like an optimist. I never like to put any apps down. So even though
Sure.
it's had its sort of moment, um, I wouldn't count it out entirely. Like who knows
Right.
what how the product will evolve. What's interesting is Peach launched 4 months after Byte. Byte
Hmm.
was Dom and the team's initial iteration, and it was kind of complicated and confusing. Really
Mm.
well designed, but from a visual perspective, but also like super confusing. And 4 months later, they launched Peach, and I actually asked him. First comment I made on that thread was like, "What happened to Byte? That was really fast."
Mhm.
And so what I'm getting at is like their speed of execution is fast. Like to kill and
Sure.
launch a new app within 4 months, and that doesn't mean that they took 4 months to build Peach. It might have been much shorter.
Right.
But the next evolution of Peach could be something completely different, or it's every iteration you have, you also learn more too, and user behavior and what works and what doesn't. And so, the next swing at the bat might be it has a higher chance of hitting
Mhm.
for most people, I believe.
Absolutely. And I've got to give you kind of like a common basic product related question here, but um, what are your thoughts on the necessity to add in like MVPs? Like, should organizations really be going full on building out really robust systems, or should they actually kind of, just go out in the street, ask people conversations, and
Yeah.
kind of start at that basic level? Is there like a healthy medium that you see?
I, I think it's a super contextual question, and I think the answer maybe skews in different directions depending on what you're building. So if it's let's say it's a B2B product or service, and it's more of a utility and you're trying to solve a specific pain
Right.
point, it would be very unwise not to talk to your like target customer and start learning more about them,
Sure.
in what their current workflow is and how to improve, their current process, save time, save money, etc.
Mhm.
So for those type of approaches, I would err on like, learning more with the customer and building an MVP and get them like actually using the product. Then
Mhm.
on the other side, like a consumer based product, like let's say Peach isn't something you can ask someone like, would you use an app that has like magic words and gifts and everything? Like it's really hard to customer develop yourself into like a social product sometimes.
Sure.
And so in that case, you have to, I believe, build an app or a service or experience that's like just enough of like media enough to make it
Right.
compelling. But what's media enough is like super subjective, and you actually don't really know. Like maybe there is an MVP, or maybe you have to build a whole like thing to make it actually,
Mhm.
worthwhile or useful for people.
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So, outside of South by Southwest, obviously we're seeing a lot of different kind of tech that's just kind of bubbling up in all sorts of different places. I noticed earlier today that you posted that Coachella is going to be handing out Google Cardboard. So
Yeah,
VR is obviously going to be like a big thing, but what are your thoughts on kind of like VR and augmented reality?
yeah. I'm. Have you by chance used HTC Vive? Have you experienced that at all?
I've unfortunately not. The best I've got is one of those Chinese knockoffs that are just like a more comfortable Google Cardboard.
Yeah. So I went to Comic Con for the first time this past year, and that
Mhm.
was back in, when was it? August, I think, last year. And HTC Vive was the first experience where my mind was like, it clicked, where I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And what it is it's like a 15 by 15 room. You put a headset on, you put headphones on, two controllers, and you
Mhm.
start walking around the room. And, what I'm seeing is like, the first one was Tilt Brush, which you may have seen demos for, but you can draw in the
Mhm.
physical space. You could draw a home and you can go inside that home. And the
Sure.
next experience was at Aperture Science, which is this like science lab where the robot lady is telling me things to do, and I'm moving around the world. And so now I'm rambling, but I'm super excited for the experiences you can create that are going to be super immersive and unique. I'm also fascinated by the implications and effects it will have on people. Like already today, people are sucked into like whether it's World of Warcraft or Dota or whatever, League of Legends. There's a number of people that are sucked into those worlds, and that's fine. I don't actually like, I won't judge anyone for being sucked into a world like that, but there will be more and more people sucked into a world where it is actually almost like it's, for them it's going to be almost indistinguishable from real life, like long term
Sure.
eventually. And so what does that do to society, and how does that change the way people live? There's a lot of interesting sci-fi kind of theories or ideas around that topic in particular. And then AR is fascinating as too. I think we're a ways out from AR being something that, like, even more than VR, like
Mhm.
further out than from that being a mainstream utility.
Sure.
But there's so many use cases that would make it so useful. Whether it's, I'm at a party, I can't remember all the names that I was like just introduced to, like being able to
Right.
see their name without them knowing would be a very small but useful
Yes.
utility. Um, and so many other things too.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, kind of going back to the VR side of things, I totally agree. I mean, I know a few people who are still kind of obsessed with like that Second Life. I don't know if you want to call it a game, but whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. But I mean, people like believe that's actually a component of their life. So I can only imagine when they kind of port that over to something even more high graphic and more and immersive, that it's
Hmm.
just going to complicate things even a little more. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And in some ways you can, for some people, they may live their lives in VR. I mean, they will actually.
Mhm.
I think that can't not happen.
Right.
And that introduces, it's the same thing. Like when I'm looking at my phone, a lot of people are like, oh, like be present, like you're sucked into this phone. And
Right.
um, my personal feeling is like, yes, you should be present and like attentive and respectful to people around you, but I'm also communicating with a lot of people and like device that
Mhm.
I had before. So when you take that into the virtual reality world where you can now, immersive way without being physically there, I find that fascinating and not a bad thing
Absolutely, yeah.
really at all.
I think it might be cutting out. There it goes. Sorry, my internet's a little bit lagging right now. So, just out of
No
curiosity,
worries.
you are super active, obviously, on the platform, and then just between the other platforms, like on Snapchat and Twitter, how do you kind of balance, I guess, pushing forward with Product Hunt on the product side and kind of the strategy side versus engaging with community and probably the 500 people that pitch you a day?
Yeah, I guess it all comes down to prioritization and being efficient with your time ultimately. And I don't know, I'm probably not the most efficient, but I'm trying to focus more. And I actually, when you emailed me, you may have noticed I sent an auto reply, which I recently added an auto reply to my
Sure.
email just because I was feeling overwhelmed. And if nothing else,
Mhm.
it feels like less stressful. Because I know that I'm setting expectations that I
Right.
may not get back or maybe slow to respond to emails. Yeah, so for me, my day like is a lot of it in the morning is focused on
Mhm.
community and being on Product Hunt and being super active online. And then my afternoon is it's a little bit slower online. Like once the day's kind of going, it's slower on Product Hunt than it is in the morning. And so I dedicate that time to whatever I'm focusing on, whether it's like partnership stuff or
Mhm.
recruiting or product stuff and whatnot. Um, and then I have a ton of like awesome teammates helping. So now I don't have to stress so much about like, okay,
Right.
we're not tweeting anything. Like Neve is handling all that, and like Ben, when I wake up, has the site, under control. So there's no typos and bad
Very
images or
cool.
bad links and stuff like that.
So, I would love to kind of poke more into the back end of what you guys are doing, but I don't want to lock up too much of your time. So, just have one other kind of major question, which is, beyond even AR and VR and some of the tech that people are kind of pitching are, do you see any common themes that are appearing more and more in the tech and product worlds, or I mean, just something like that most people that don't grasp. I feel like you probably see so many more things that
Yeah.
you probably have a better idea than most anyone would.
Yeah, there's maybe the obvious
Mhm.
one, but worth mentioning is Slack as a platform is interesting. And every single day so a year ago you might see like one
Mhm.
Slack bot or integration every week or two, and now we're seeing like one or more every single day
Sure.
for different use cases and things. So part of the reason for that is one, Slack
Mhm.
is successful, especially in the tech world. Everyone's aware of it. A lot of people use it. Two, it's a new channel that you communicate and then use like
Mhm.
every single day, multiple times per day. So injecting yourself within that flow is super valuable. And three, people are always looking for new distribution channels. And the App Store is super, super noisy. Just a lot of people
Mhm.
are building apps, and it's hard to break through that. Like a very, very small percentage are going to find any success
Mhm.
directly through the App Store as a channel itself. Um, and then it also, when you integrate a Slack bot, you're hooked in. It's not like a website where you visit it and then you
Right.
you have no way to contact that user again. When the Slack bot is in there, you're actually able to reach them in some capacity, and also not just one person, but their whole team, if it's depending on how the Slack bot's set up. So I find that really interesting as a new platform. And as with any
Mhm.
platform, like when Facebook opened up a long time ago, it became
Sure.
frothy with a lot of people building things, and then they had to clamp down. So there's always that concern, and like what will the Slack platform be for creators, and is there too big of a risk to rely on that as a sole distribution channel? Um, so I find that really interesting. And then we
No,
could talk
feel
more
free to
about this,
keep
or I
going.
can just stop
This is great.
rambling. But okay. I think the other one that I'm interested in is voice based. I mentioned this earlier, but voice based apps or services or interfaces. So Anchor I mentioned earlier is one of them. Roger is another one that's interesting. It's actually just like a walkie talkie, really. So you press a button and your voice carries. And there's things like Voxer and other apps like that that have been around. But then there's also hardware like Amazon Echo. They just released Echo Dot, and Siri's been around for a while, and so there's just a lot of
Sure.
interest, it seems like, in voice-based communication. And I'm not 100% sure why that is. I think maybe part of it is the technology now is at a point where it can better recognize your voice than ever before. So there's a lot of interesting ways to use voice as a main means of interface or
Sure.
communicating with apps or people. But I'm not 100% sure why there seems to be more and more people in the space. Maybe outside of the inspiration of Her, the movie
Yeah, I
from
mean,
like
that
last
was
year. I don't know.
actually my kind of add-on question. I was going to have to say, like, are people finally becoming like okay with talking to their devices and gadgets? Before, personally, people I knew were like, "This is a little bit
Yeah.
weird. I'm talking to my, TV remote." So, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to mention something about Anchor, which is really, really well designed. Is the way you use it is you open up the app and you press a button, and then you do this, and you just start talking. And what's beautiful about this gesture is no one knows I'm talking
Right.
like to an app, or like it's really weird if I was to have to do
Right.
this and I press a button and talk in public. But if I'm like this, people think I'm just talking
Sure.
to like some person. And so it allows you to create content in any environment, whether you're standing in line at some place, you can talk normally and you don't feel weird about it because this is like a
Yeah,
normal
exactly. I
thing that
mean,
people
basically,
do.
it's kind of like a UX approach where they're figuring out social norms and adjusting for it.
Yeah,
Very cool.
exactly. Yeah, it's well put.
So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but is there anything else you want to throw in there right at the end?
Yeah, let's see. We're still figuring out exactly what we're doing at South by. We have a few like smaller brunches, and for those going, I'm doing a talk on the 15th at 9:30. So we're like towards the end and really early. I don't know if anyone's going to show up. But we're also thinking about doing a scavenger hunt or a flash party or something. So follow Product Hunt on Twitter and on Snapchat. Where Product Hunt Team is our username on Snapchat if you want to follow it.
And
So
I can vouch for
yeah,
the
it'll be
Product
fun.
Hunt Snapchat account. You guys post some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, that's all Neve. I literally walked into the office after I was going to the gym in the afternoon. Then I come back and I turn the corner and I see Neve filming the fridge with like our
Mm.
cat, this like little cat doll. And I just looked at him for a moment. I'm like, we pay you to do this?
That's the
This is
job of
amazing.
dreams. That's what that is.
It's the job of dreams, yeah.
Well, everybody, I highly recommend you guys going to Product Hunt if you haven't already. Again, it is my favorite site, one of the first ones that I check out every morning. Ryan, really appreciate your time. I think this has been very informative, and we'll probably stalk you again soon and go for a follow-up. Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Elliot.
All right, bye.
Take care, dude.